Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. Looks like we're doing Yud Bet. So it says here in the tour, וצריך להזכיר בה מעין המאורע. So what does that mean? You have to bless. When you bless, you have to also include the holiday, right? That you're currently in. So, so what are we talking about here? We're not talking about Birkat Hamazon, right? Because we already discussed that, if you remember. Right, so we're talking here about ala michya, me'en shalosh, right? The short thing, that we do when we eat mezonot or something like that, or when we eat certain fruits, 7 species, blah blah blah. So there, right, you have to also mention the holiday, whether it's Shabbat or Rosh Chodesh, right, or the festivals and so forth and so on. You gotta you gotta put an insert, that includes that. That's what he's talking about. So it says here in the Bet Yosef, "Chen katvu sham besov perek ketzad mivrachin." So that's what it says in this perek, right? Which is in again, right in Brachot. Tosfot b'shem Yerushalmi. The Tosfot brings in Yerushalmi, namely Yerushalmi. אלא שכתבו אחר כך ומיהו לא נהגו העולם. But he says afterwards they said, but you know what? The custom is not ken like that. ויכול להיות שמזכירים מן המאורע היינו דווקא בימיהם. So he says maybe it could be that they used to mention those holidays in those times, in those days, שהיו רגילים לקבוע היין והמיני פירות. Because in those days, they had this thing where they would like get together and drink wine, like a drinking party, cocktail party. I don't know what you want to call it, right? They used to have those things. So it was like a get together. It was like fixed, thing. And same thing also with the fruits. So like, you have those hors d'oeuvre parties, cocktail parties. They used to have those things in the old days, apparently, right? So yeah. So he says maybe it only applied in that time. אבל העידנא לא קווה, but he says no, we don't really, make these kinds of get-togethers. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, וכן כתב סמ"ג, that's what it says in the סמ"ג. וגם הרשב"א כתב מיהו לא נהגו כן עכשיו. So Rashba also says, right, that now it's not customary to do this. So he says, look what people do. If you don't believe me, right, go check the custom, your local custom there. וגם הרעב"ד ורבותינו בעלי התוספות כתבו, דעכשיו לא נהגו כן. Also the Ravad says this, right, in addition to the Tosfot. That's very interesting. The truth is, that we do actually do it. Look in your Siddur, you'll find it there. Right? Believe it or not, voila, it's there. Okay, so we'll see what happens with this, right? I guess, it really depends on the place and time you're talking about. Could be that there were certain places and certain times that they didn't have this custom. Apparently, that's what it was. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. אבל רבנו יונה בראש, there you go, right? So you see on the other side, you have רבנו יונה on the ראש, כתבו בסתם כדברי ירושלמי, they like ירושלמי. וכן כתב הרמב"ם, right? Also Rambam, oh, there you go. פרק ג' והרוקח, also this. כתב שהוא נוהג להזכיר. So he says, I says, I myself, I do mention it, the holidays. כתוב בתשבץ, and it says in תשבץ, שכך היה נוהג מהר"ם, also מהר"ם did it. ואומר ביום טוב, וזכרנו לטובה, זכרנו לטובה ביום חג פלוני, כי אתה טוב מטיב לכל, ברוך אתה השם, like this, right? So in other words, you mention the insert there, which deals with the holiday, and then you conclude the blessing right afterwards, and you seal it up, and that's it. You're done. That's what we do also. Okay, let's move on. But the truth is, there are certain holidays that we don't mention in the Alamichya. You know which two there we have? Which two? This is definitely extra credit question. Not everybody knows this. Okay, so the truth is, right, we don't mention Hanukkah and we don't mention Purim. Those two we don't mention. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. Anyway, it could be that, since they decreed to say Ala Nisim, for those holidays, right, Purim and Hanukkah, so Ala Nisim is very long, so it doesn't really fit into the context, the size of the Ala Michya, The Ala Nisim is even bigger than the whole Ala Michya. So it's sort of like defeats the purpose, whatever. Could be that's the reason why they didn't to put it in. Interesting. Yeah, so apparently, when the rabbis decreed to say Ala Nisim during Hanukkah and Purim, they only, they didn't put it into the Ala Michya. They didn't want to put it in there because probably, again, as we said, right, it's too long. That's the problem. Okay, they could have done a shorter version. I don't know. Don't ask. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. Why didn't they do a shorter version? I'm not really sure. Okay, whatever. It's all good. But the rest of the holidays we do mention, right? Whether it's Shabbat, festivals, Rosh Chodesh, right, and all that good stuff, right? All those good holidays, we do mention them. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. So now he brings the text of all these, inserts. So, Shabbat Omer, what does he say on Shabbat? ועלינו לירושלים בשמחנו בבנינה ורוצה ויחליצנו ביום השבת הזה. Right? That's what we see also today. Right? What does this mean? I'll translate it for you. Right? And you should desire uh, in us in the Sabbath day, whatever. Okay, so we do mention it. Ki ata tov metiv lakol, and so forth, so on. Then we continue, right, then finish the blessing. Uverosh chodesh, right, as we said, right, we do have our Rosh Chodesh. Omer, how do we say on Rosh Chodesh? V'zochrenu letova b'yom Rosh Chodesh hazeh. Remember us for good on Rosh Chodesh day. That's what we say. Ki ata tov metiv, and then, right, we finish it off again. כתוב ביגות מימון, it says in this book, ובחנוכה פורים אין צריך, there you go, right? See? He looks like I preceded this whole thing, right? So Chanukah and Purim, he says, "En tzarich leazkir ba men al meorah." You don't have to mention it. So that's why we don't mention it in Chanukah and Purim. There you go. Okay, let's move on. Katav Bahag, it says in Bahag, Ve'im achal perot mishivat aminim. So he says it like this: if he ate fruits from the seven species, ve'achal minim mezonot, and also mezonot. He had mezonot also. Ve'shatayan, he also drank wine, right? So in other words, now he's obligated to do this, men shalosh, because of three reasons, right? Mezonot, wine, and also fruits, seven species. So he needs to bless on all of them. How do you do it? That's the question, right? So the answer is, we kill, all the birds with the one stone. What does that mean? We include all these things into one blessing, and this way, right? We don't have to do it three times. What's the point of doing it three times? So how do we do that, right? So I'll tell you how we do it today. So we're gonna say ala michya v'ala kalkala, which is on the mezonot. Then we say ala gefen v'ala priya gefen, which is on the wine. And then we say ala etz v'ala priya etz, which is on the fruits. So we say all those, and that's how we do it, right? We combine everything into one. Efficiency, what I mean, right? You guys know, right? Trump Doge, this is like a Doge, it's like a Jewish Doge. We're proving efficiency over here, putting everything into one blessing. Okay, very good. I think they got that from us. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's move on here. So it says in Beit Yosef, "Chen katvu Rabbeinu Yonah ve'arosh ve'arashba." Right? They also wrote this. All these Rishonim. Besop perek ketzad mevarchin b'shem Rabbeinu Hananel. Right? In the name of the Rach. V'chen katav gam ken Rambam. Rambam also writes this, that we lumped them all together, as we said, right? The Katav Rabbeinu Siman Reish Yud Aleph, two writes in the chapter 211, שברכת היין, כיוון שמפרט בה גפן היא חשובה, כשכולל אותם ברכות בפירות, אז צריך להזכיר תחילה על הגפן. So he says that when you lump them together, I think one time somebody asked me this, which one goes first? Who gets the priority over here, right? So he says, this rabbi, that the wine goes first. Interesting. But from my recollection, it's the mezonot that comes first. But let's see. Let's see what we got here. Maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. Let's see, right? So if you look in the Siddur, you'll see it there. Anyway, so it says, "Chashuva, we should call it ota." So he says the wine comes first. You know why? Because it's the most prominent of those blessings. Because הפירות צריך להזכיר תחילה על גפן ועל פרי הגפן, ואחר כך על העץ ועל פרי העץ. So he says first the wine and then the fruits. But that we also do like that. ומי הוא מעשה כדירה דחיתים מסורים, קודמים די, look, see, I was right, you see? So he says, but the mezonot comes before. Right? So I was right, so can I tell you? I got lucky this time. All right. Okay, so that's the way it is, right? So according to this, the order is what I just told you, which is that first is the mezonot, ala mechia, ve'ala kalkala, and then ala gefen ve'al pri gefen, the wine, and then the fruits, because this is the order of prominence, for these foods. Okay, let me ask you guys a question now, right? Uh, why is mezonot more prominent than wine? So the answer is that it satiates you. Mm. So like, you can make like a meal out of it. The truth is, that even the Chazal say, the sages, they say that even wine satiates you. But it's definitely not on the same level as mezonot, right? It's a different level of satiation there. And that's why we do birkat hamazon, right? When we eat bread and so forth and so on. So that's a different level, there. So that's why it's more prominent than wine. It's basically it's a mainstay, of our diet, right? We can't really live without that stuff. I mean, technically speaking, a person could live without it, but just it's not really it's not a very good life like that. Let's put it this way. Okay. So what else we got here? It says Begam Kodmino Pasuk Adkan. So he says also another thing. So another thing he says, he gives you another reason why Mezonot comes before. So it's because it's mentioned first in the verse. So which verse are we talking about? Any of you guys have an idea? So there's a verse in Deuteronomy, right? Devarim over there, and I think it's Het. Talks over there about it's praising the land of Israel, that it's a land of this and a land of that, right? So the first thing it mentions there is wheat, right? Eretz chita. So you see from there, right, that since it's brought first in the pasuk in the verse there, so that also gives it prominence. The fact that it's first, and then right, wine comes later on in the verse. It's not the one of the first ones. So there you go, right? You can't argue with that. Okay, great. So we're done with that. Let's try Yud Bet. Let's try Shulchan Aruch. So
That verse in Deuteronomy, is that the one that talks about like the order of prominence for tithing?
that's tithing. Oh well, it's not. I don't know. I'm not really sure if it's talking about tithing there. It's talking about the praises of land. We do use that for for blessings. The prominence of the blessings, the order of blessings. That's what we have in the Gemara and Masechet Brachot there. So I'm not sure where you got the tithing thing. If you can find that, let me know if you find the source for that. I'm not sure.
In chapter 14.
In what, Deuteronomy?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not the verse I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about 8:8.
8:8. Okay, thanks.
8:8. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken. Okay, very good. So anyway, right, the point is that says here Shulchan Aruch, Maskirin ba men meoras. As we said, right, that we do mention the holidays, in this man shalosh, right, which we call, it's like a mini Birkat Hamazon, whatever. That's what it really means, man shalosh. It means like a mini Birkat Hamazon. That's what it really is. Why is it a mini Birkat Hamazon? Because it has all the elements of Birkat Hamazon inside there, concentrated into one blessing. That's pretty much what it is. So it's a mini. Okay, so okay, great. So it says over here in the Shulchan Aruch, Maskirin ba me'en me'ora. As we said, we mentioned the holiday, right? So he says, which holidays? Shabbat, Yom Tov, Rosh Chodesh, right? All these holidays. Right? Ela lo beChanukah and Purim, but not Chanukah and Purim. What can we do, right? We already gave a pretty good reason why that is. I think that was a very nice idea there. But I told you. Im achal perot mizayin minim. So it says if he ate fruits of the seven species, v'achal minem mezonot, and then ate mezonot, right? In other words, all three of them he ate. B'shatay, and he also drank wine. So what do you do there? Ichlol hakol b'bracha achad. You include everything into one blessing, as we said, right? Okay. So efficiency, as we said, right? Efficiency. V'akdima michya. So what comes first, right? First the mezonot al michya. And then the geffen, and then the wine. and then the fruits of the tree. That's the way it is. So all these things, right, that we're mentioning over here are the ones that are mentioned in that verse that I told you about, right? They're all there. If you look there. So why those dafka? Because the land of Israel is praised for those species, you know. In other words, they're particularly good over there, you know, high quality. These species in Eretz Israel, particularly good, especially good. And if you live there, you know what I mean. I don't have to. I wouldn't have to tell you anything if you tasted the fruits over there. You see how much better it is than the fruits over here. Different plateau altogether. And that's only in our times, you know. But when there's Bet Mikdash, it's even better. You know, it's even higher level. So we haven't seen that yet. There are some amazing things, by the way, which are said in the Masechet Brachot about the quality of the fruits in Eretz Israel, and also I think in Masechet Megillah as well. How great the fruits were, you know, over there. Like in the time of the temple, the fruits were like just like incredible, like miraculous, you know, like stuff there going on there. We're not on that level today, but still we're far above, you know, the international average. Let's put it this way, right? We're still, yeah, we're definitely ahead of that one. Okay, so all right, that's good to know. What else we got here? So then, so then he says, how do you seal it? Right after at the end of all that, על הארץ ועל המחיה, ועל פרי הגפן for the wine, ועל הפירות. That's exactly how we do it. That's it. Okay, without any questions, I'll go on. I'll move on. So let's go to Gimel. This is also an important halacha, very practical. Happens all the time, this kind of thing. You know, the funny thing was, you know, when I was learning in the kollel in Israel, you know, in Maran's kollel, you know, a lot of guys over there, you know, were doing like dayanut, you know, becoming dayanim, you know, and I was like, I don't want to be a dayan yet. I'm sorry, I just want to know how to like what blessings to make on the foods, you know. So I concentrated on, you know, like practical stuff more, than becoming a dayan. So what do you call it? So what happened was those guys, you know, they became dayanim, but you know, they were asking me, you know, questions about the blessings on the fruits because they didn't know. They didn't know. So, you know, everything has its advantages, you know. So, you know, now that I came to America, you know, I'm learning more, you know, dayanut, you know what I mean, here in America. But when I was in Israel, I was doing more like practical stuff there. Okay, whatever. I think that's the better way to do it. You know, first you do the practical stuff, and then you become a dayan. You know, why become a dayan when you don't know practical things? You know, in life, how to do practical stuff. Doesn't make sense. You know, my humble opinion. What can I tell you? Okay. I would see people there, you know, who were like dayanim. These people, you know, and they didn't know like how to bless on foods. You know, like they didn't know how to bless on certain things. They just did. You know, they didn't study it. Unfortunately, you know. So it's kind of like, you know, it's a rare thing, you know, that a person knows the laws of brachot like very well. Most people don't know these laws. You would think, you know, that everybody should know this, like it's like ABC, you know, of Judaism, but I don't know, it just doesn't have the mazal, you know, these laws. I don't know, people don't study them very much. Don't know what to tell you. You know what it is? People think it's like very simple. Yeah, well, yeah, this is ha'etz, this is hadama. It comes from the ground. This comes from the tree. So they think, well, what else is there to learn? I mean, I know already these things. But there's actually a lot more to learn besides that. Okay. So we're gonna go through that now, right? We're in the process, right? As we said, right? Somebody was what do you call it on Facebook, like asking me, said this lady, the one lady, that she said, what is the process of conversion? So I don't know if you guys saw this. I answered her. I told her, I said, there is no conversion process in Judaism. I hate to tell you, it's not a process. It's a ceremony. You come in for an hour and you do the conversion. What process is there? What I mean? I don't know where they get this stuff from. One person told me, that I spoke to like a while ago, a few years ago. He told me this is at the root of this process, for conversion that they do these Ashkenazim. You know where it's rooted. It's rooted in Reform Judaism. That's the root of it. It's not an Orthodox concept of having a conversion process. No such a thing like that. What process do you have? It's never mentioned anywhere in the Talmud, Rambam, Shulchan Aruch. It's not there. I'm sorry. You make up things that don't exist. The process. What process? Okay, I'm just telling you that, right? It came to my head for a second. Okay. So yeah, so we'll read the Bet Yosef here, and also the tour, Yud Gimel. Did we do Shulchan Aruch? We did it. Yeah. Okay. So it says over here in the Yud Gimel, Katav Adonai Avi Arazal. He says, my father, the Rosh, wrote, She'im achal perot mishivat minim ve'achal imahem tapuchim. So it says, if he ate fruits that come from 7 species, and then he also ate together with them, right, some other fruits, which are not from 7 species, like apples. So what do you do? Do you make 2 separate blessings after blessings for them? In other words, one you do ala etz, and then the other one you do bor nefashot. Is that what you do?
I
So the
wouldn't think
answer is
so.
no. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Just do ha'etz, right?
Yeah, you do one. And the reason is because the language of that blessing covers all fruits. You know what I mean? It's just that we don't say it unless you ate one of the 7 species. But if you ate also other fruits, together with the 7 species, then it gets bunched up together. So you don't need to make 2 blessings. So you make ala etz, and you cover everything like that. That's what we're saying, right? It's important to know that, otherwise you're going to make a blessing in vain. Okay, so anyway, right, it says here, it brings a source for all this, right, in Bet Yosef. Besot Perek Ketzat Mevarchin. Where is this? And also in Brachot, right, Mem Bet. Um, but this is the Rosh. This is not the Gemara itself. Just to clarify. V'gam Rambam Katav Ken Beperek Chet, right? Rambam also says this. Zurat Din Achal Tapuchim ושתה יין שלא הזכיר מכל מקום יש לדקדק לסבר כראש. But he says the Rambam, you can see, also holds like the Rosh over there in that place. והגאות כתבו בשם סמ"ק. So these rabbis, what about them? שנפטרו התפוחים בברכת היין. So so they say even more, right? That the apples can be even absolved with the blessing of the wine, not only on fruits. That's interesting. והרשב"א, הביא דברי הרמב"ם, Rashba brings the Rambam, שאם אכל פירות משבעה מינים, if he ate fruits from 7 species, ואכל עמהם תפוחים, and he ate apples with them, מברך אחריהם ברכה מעין 3, והיא פותרת הכל. So he also says, right, that it absolves everything when you do the על העץ. Okay, great. But in other words, it seems to be that according to this, even if you're blessing on wine or mezonot, you can still also include it. But I don't remember that we paskin that way. But let's see anyway. So והיא פותרת הכל. כתב עליו בתלמוד מסתבר הוא, so he says he agrees with this, that it absolves everything. So the Rashba agrees with the Rambam. That's what we're saying. ולא מפני שמעין 3 עדיף מבורא נפשות. Not because the one is better than the other, the על המחיה על העץ is better than בורא נפשות. ויפתור אותה, and that's therefore he absolves it. אלא מפני שמזכיר פירות. The reason is because he says he's mentioning fruits. על העץ ועל פרי העץ. That's the whole thing. This is also a fruit. So why shouldn't it be absolved? It makes sense, right? ילקח כולל כל מה שיאכל בפירות העץ והוא הדין, והוא אותם לשותי יין, ואכל תפוחים לאותם שחותמים בה על הארץ ועל הפירות, אבל אי חתים ביין על הארץ ועל פרי הגפן, לא מהנה. So here's the thing, right? Rashba says now something very sharp, which is that, as we just said, right, that some are suggesting that even when you're drinking, when you're blessing on wine, it could also include the fruits. But he's saying, right, that would only be if you mention the fruits, but if you don't mention the fruits, right, in that blessing, it's not included. So in other words, if you're blessing ala gefen bi'al pri gefen, right, and that's all you say, you don't mention the word perot, fruits, so then it's not going to be included. That's what he's saying, right? It makes sense what he's saying. We only include it if it's mentioned. Okay, great. So אדרבה, זו ברכה פרטית ואינה כוללת אפילו שאר פירות של שבעת המינים עד כאן לשונו. So he says, really the truth is, it doesn't include any fruits. When you're blessing on wine only, right, you don't mention the word fruits. It's not included at all. So he says. והמורדכי כתב פרק כיצד מברכים. It says מורדכי, דיבר רבנו חננאל, וכתב, he wrote רבנו חננאל's words, כתב עליו דווקא בהנח מינים שברכותיהם שוות. So that only includes, he says, the types of fruits types of, species that the blessing is the same. תקולו ברכתן מעין 3, because they all have מעין 3 as their blessing. אבל ברכת הבורא נפשות, but when you do בורא נפשות, לא שייכה למעין 3. It's not really connected to the מעין 3. לא לומר ברכה מעין 3, ולפתור בורא נפשות. So they don't interchange. That's what he's trying to say, right? These two blessings. Bor nefashot will not cover, right, man shalosh, and man shalosh will not cover bor nefashot. So you can't interchange them. Each one is specific to its own types only. בורא נפשות, ולא לכל עמהם עד כאן. So you shouldn't include them. He says, וכבר נתבהר שכל הפוסקים החלוקים עליו. So it says, we already explained, right, that all the poskim argue with this. כך אין לסמוך על דבריו. So you shouldn't rely on his words. Aha. So what is he talking about here that you shouldn't rely? Yeah, so I think he's trying to say like this, right? That this rabbi, the Mordechai, it seems to be saying that you cannot do this, right? You cannot absolve something which needs bor nefashot with ala etz. But says Bet Yosef, right? In the end, that as we always saw, all the poskim don't agree with this. They say that you can do that. So therefore, we don't paskin like him. That's what he's saying. Okay, great. So we'll see in the Shulchan Aruch exactly, right, what all this means. Bottom line, right? We have a little more piece here, and then we'll go over there. Okay, so it says over here in Bet Yosef. Um, so it says first of all a tour, right? It says that uh, if I want to say right that it also absolves all kinds of other foods, right, which are not fruits. So it says regarding this Bet Yosef, mi liftam mikru basar v'dagim. So it says Bet Yosef. He's talking about the things which are shakol, like meat and right and fish and eggs and stuff like this. וכיוצא בהם מדברים שמלפתים בהם את הפת, things which come as they accompany the bread, right? As a relish, whatever, as a main dish, side dish, God knows what. והטעם שלא הודה הראש לדבריו. So he says the reason that the Rosh did not agree to his words, נראה שהוא משום, it's because the mina liftan af agav, the mizan zaine. So it says even though these things do, satiate, they do nourish you, yeah, right. They nourish. Lo sade, but they don't. That's the thing, There's nourishment and there's satiation. So they do nourish you, but they don't satiate you. So what are we talking about? Shehakol, things which are shehakol don't satiate really. They nourish. That's something else. That's why you can't really have a meal without something which is mezanot or bread because it doesn't. It's not a meal, It's you don't get satiated like that. You know, especially if you don't have any rice, as we said, right? That also satiates. But rice is not on the same level as these, right? Mezonot and bread, but still, it's pretty decent, right? You can have a pretty decent meal with rice. Not bad at all. Okay, so anyway, but he says, about the misad salad, but he says when it comes to grains, right? Foods made of grains, they satiate, that's a different thing. Hilkach la shayachei hadadeh. So it says therefore they're not connected one with the other, and that's why right al doesn't cover these things which are shakol because they're not the same category of foods. They're not satiation. They don't satiate. Okay, that's important stuff. This stuff really very practical and very important to understand these things. So let's go to Shulchan Aruch. So it says Shulchan Aruch like this: Im achal perot b'zayin minin. If he ate fruits from the seven species, ve'achal tapuchim, and then he ate also apples, right? אינו צריך לברך על התפוחים בר נפשות. You don't have to do בר נפשות on the apples. שגם הם בכלל ברכת העץ, because they're also included על העץ, because it's mentioning fruits. וגם הם ברפי העץ הם, they're also the blessing is העץ. אבל אם אכל תפוחים ושתה יין, but if he ate um, if he ate apples and he drank wine, right? So then what? Then you would have to do bar nefashot on the apples, right? Why? Because when it comes to the blessing on the wine, fruits are not mentioned there, so you can't really include that one and the other. All the more so, right? If he ate shakol, meat, right? This kind of stuff, right? Or vegetables, right? Things like this. And he drank wine with it, so it's not going to cover one the other. So it's going to require its own blessing, right? Bor nefashot. Okay, great. Well, achal mizayim meaning, or let's say he ate from the same 7 species. Uh, שצריך לברך על כל אחד ואחד. You have to bless on each one. והוא הדין אם אכל בשר ודגים ואכל מחמשת המינים. Same thing also would apply if he ate meat and fish, right? And also ate from 5 species. אין ברכת המלכים פותרת את הבשר ואת הדגים. So then we call it the al mechia will not cover the meat and the fish. As we said, right? This is shakol. This is mezonot. 2 different things. So they're not included one with the other. Okay, great, fantastic. So we have more time. We can do another one. Let's go to Dalid. This is also an interesting one and important also as well. So it says like this, right? Katab Achir Rabbeinu Yechiel, right? It says, my brother Rabbi Yechiel wrote, right? Achal anavim v'shata yain. היה נראה לי שאין צריך להזכיר על היין ועל פרי העץ. So he says, what about if you ate grapes, right? And also you drank wine? Does one blessing cover them? Right? So it seems to me, it says that you don't have to mention ala etz ve'al pri ha'etz. In other words, you could just say ala gefen ve'al pri ha'gefen. It would cover both of them. Since they're both from the vine. Midi dahava anavim. So it said resembles the case where you have tapuchim, like it resembles the case where you have grapes and also apples. So fine. What else we got here? כלומר, דקשם שכשאוכל ענבים ותפוחים, אין צריך לברך על התפוחים ברכתם, מיוחדים להם. So it says just like when he eats grapes and apples, right, and wine, you צריך לברך על התפוחים. You have to bless on the apples, ברכתם, their blessing, ומיוחד להם, which is designated for them, לפי שהם נכללים בברכת ענבים. Because they're also included, and you don't have to bless, right? It says for each one. Why? Because he says that they're included with the grapes, shehi alayetz, which is also alayetz, and kishiachal anavim meshata yain. Also, he says if he ate grapes and drank wine, and tzarich levarech al anavim bikatam, you wouldn't have to bless special blessing for the grapes. Which is singled out for them, because they're included with the wine, right? Same source, same tree. Okay, so he says, but the reason why he didn't agree with this. So in other words, what we're saying is that even though Rabbeinu Yechiel wrote his opinion regarding this, the Tur did not agree. He says, I'm sorry, brother, but I don't agree with you with this one, my brother. Okay, sometimes brothers argue, You know how it is, right? Okay, so so he says, what's the reason why he doesn't agree with him? Arosh, so it wasn't the Tur, it was the Rosh who didn't agree with him, right? Daddy didn't agree. Oh boy. Now he's in real trouble. When daddy doesn't agree, you're in trouble. What can I tell you? Okay, so what's the reason why the Rosh argued with him? נראה שהוא מפני שתפוחים כיוון שברכה ראשונה היא בורא בעץ. So it says, because since when it comes to apples, right, it's the same blessing, בורא פרי העץ, in the beginning, as the grapes, שייך לומר שעל ברכת העץ פוטרתן. So then it makes sense to say, right, that the blessing of the trees will absolve both of them. אבל ענבים כיוון דברכת הראשונה בשונים אינם בורא פרי הגפן. But when it comes to wine, I'm sorry, when it comes to grapes, that we don't make bori pia gefen on that, we make bori pia etz. So therefore, ela bori nefesh etz. Lo minam de birkat gefen tiptanim. So therefore, that's why we don't say that the blessing of the gefen, right, of the vine, is gonna absolve them. So what would this mean? What would you have to do, right, practically speaking? As we said before, right, what you got to do is in one blessing, right, you include both of them. You don't need two separate blessings over here because they're both main shalosh, right? So therefore, you say it like this, right? Ala gefen ve'al priya gefen, ala etz ve'al priya etz. So you covered everything there. Okay, great. So that's what he's saying. Okay, so I see Daddy's point over here. You know what I mean? Dad. I think Dad is right. Makes sense what he's saying. As I say, Father knows best. You know. Okay, so let's see what we got in the Shulchan Aruch here. So it says like this, שתה יין וברך ברפי הגפן ואכל ענבים צריך לברך להם בורא בעץ. וכן בברכת אחרונה צריך להזכיר על העץ ועל פרי העץ. So it says Shulchan Aruch, right, like the Rosh, right, that what? That when you eat grapes and also drink wine, right, I would say it's kind of like redundant to eat both together. I don't know. Some people they must like it. I don't know what can I tell you. I would think it's redundant. Okay, to each his own, right? Everybody has his own taste. But anyway, right? So the thing is that if you do that, you got to make a separate blessing, whether it's in the beginning, that you got to do Borei Priya Eitz on the grapes, and you got to do Borei Priya Giffen on the wine, and also afterwards, right after blessing, you're gonna do Ala Etz, right, and also Ala Giffen Val Priya Giffen. You got to do both. So, but really, as we said, right, it's only one blessing. We just put them both together. We lump them up together. So that's the way it is, right? Okay, great. I think we can knock off another one. Come on, let's do it. I got time, It's a short one. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So this was Yud. Now we're going to Tetvav. So, but he says like this, right? כל מקום הסכים לזה שאם בירך על ענבים, בורא פרי גפן ביצה. But it says, the Rosh does agree though, right? בדיעבד. If he blessed on anavim, right, on the grapes, borei pia gefen, he did fulfill obligation. Because after all, the words do fit in, right? There's no lie there. There's no falsehood, right? It's all emet. So therefore, bediavad, it does work when you say borei pia gefen on grapes. Okay, great. So let's see the Bet Yosef here. Says Bet Yosef, even though he writes close by, Shen dat Rosh Ken, that the Rosh didn't agree with all this stuff. Ken lo bracha rishona velo bracha achona, whether it's the first blessing or the final blessing. Hatam ata leapuke me Rabbeinu Yechel shaya savur. That's coming to argue with Rabbeinu Yechel that he held לכתחילה מברך על היין ואין צריך לברך על הענבים. He holds even לכתחילה, you don't have to bless on both of them. והראש לא הודה לו, but the Rosh didn't agree with that as we already mentioned. מפני שלכתחילה צריך, because לכתחילה you gotta differentiate between them, right? לברך על כל דבר, ברכתו מיוחדת. You gotta bless on each one, his own unique blessing. לא. ואחר כמה, so he says, but here he says, שאם בדיעבד ברך על הענבים, he says, בדיעבד, if he blessed on the grapes, right? בורא פרי הגפן, יצא, he did fulfill his obligation. meaning to have a פרי העץ, שאף על פי שלכתחילה אין מברך עליו, לבורא פרי העץ, אם בדיעבד ברך בורא פרי אדמה, יצא. Same thing like, it resembles the case of בורא פרי העץ ובורא פרי אדמה. If you blessed on something which is בורא פרי העץ, you blessed on the hadama, b'diavad, you fulfilled your obligation, because after all, it does come from the ground, so it's not falsehood there. So therefore, it does work there. Same thing over here. Okay, great. What else we got? Same thing also here says. So it seems to me that the same thing also would apply if you blessed on the grapes and the vine, the b'diavad, right? So in other words, he blessed on the final blessing he did, ala gifen, even though he ate grapes. B'diavad yatsa, b'diavad he fulfills obligation. What's the difference between the first blessing and last blessing? They're all the same. So meaning what? Since the language fits into the context, into the usage, right, into the circumstance, so therefore it fits good. Everything is good. Okay, great. So what else we got? So it says also that which he wrote, right? This implies that which he wrote that if he blessed on the grapes, Giffen, he fulfills the obligation. Whether he blessed on the grapes themselves, or Ben Shibirach ala yain, or when he blessed on the wine, that he was intending to absolve the fruit of the right, the grapes. He intended to absolve them, even though he wasn't supposed to do that. Also there he does full obligation, even though he did it by mistake. It was a mistake what he did, but b'diavad does work. Why is that? If you had the intention, right, to absolve the grapes, in this blessing, it's like b'diavad already. Yatsa. So therefore, he does full obligation. I see. Wow, it's very nice. Very nice. Ela shematzati the Rashi, but it says on the other hand, it says I found with Rashi. Shkatab gabeha de'amar Ula. He wrote that which Ula said. Machloket kishe birkotein shavot, that the blessing, the machloket is only when the blessing is the same. But en birkotein shavot, if the blessing is not the same, he says, however, dibri akol en bircha achat batatan. So then everybody agrees that one blessing will not absolve them. Meshuv en kan machloket. So he says there's no machloket here. Even though we learn in the Mishnah that if he blessed on the fruits of the tree, he did fulfill the obligation. That's only with one species. And he erred and he blessed Borei Pri Adama. But it says when it comes to radish, right, and olives, he blessed on the radish. He does not fulfill the obligation of the olives. ומי ורבנו יונה כתב שם, דהיינו דווקא כשבשעה, רבנו says it's only at the time, שאמר פרי אדמה, לא התכוון לברך על פרי עץ. When he said פרי אדמה, he didn't have the intention to also fulfill the Borei Pri Eitz. Umashma she'im nitkaven, so implies that if he had this intention, l'chach yatsa, then he did this obligation. Ukemosh katabti betchila, like we wrote in the beginning. Okay. All right, great. That's great. So conclusion is, right, just to recap this final thing here. We already said this before, by the way, but it's good to learn this a couple of times because it's like a sort of a foreign kind of concept, but when you repeat it, it sinks in. So what am I saying? That if you have two items you're eating, right? One is bar piyadama, one is bar piyabs. So you're not supposed to bless one blessing to absolve both of them, right? You're supposed to make the specific blessing for each one. But if you had the intention, right, by mistake, whatever, but yavad, if you did this, that you wanted to do with one blessing, absolve both of them, right? For instance, right, the example I'm saying is that, he had, as we said right here, they wrote, he had radish and he had olives, right? So he's supposed to bless on each one separately, but this guy, right, he had a brainstorm all of a sudden, right? Brainstorm. So what was that? He says, you know what? I'm gonna, bless on the radish and let's also absolve the olive. So we paskin, right, that if he did this, but diavad, he did absolve it like that. Because after all, right, as we said, b'diavad, even things which grow on a tree, if you set hadama on them, they are absolved. They are, right? So that's how we paskin. Okay, great. So let's see Shulchan Aruch and we're done. Now we're really done. Okay, so it says in the Shulchan Aruch, very simple, right? Im b'diavad b'rachalat anavim b'priya gefen or acharem al gefen yatsa. If he, right, b'diavad, by mistake, whatever, he blessed on grapes, b'priya gefen, or afterwards that he blessed ala gefen. B'diavad, he did fulfill his obligation, even though he wasn't supposed to do this, right? But since there's no lie here, it does fit into the context. It's true. It's not fraud. Therefore, it does do the job. B'diavad. That's what we're saying. Right? Okay, great. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov, and we'll see you, B'ezrat Hashem, on Sunday. Have a beautiful Shabbat. Oh, by the way, the ladies, if you do live near a shul, walking distance, good idea to go hear Parshat Zachor tomorrow. Because most poskim say women are obligated in this. But if you're not really, close to a shul, what can you do, right? Then you're absolved. You rely on the other opinion, the Sefer Achim that tells you don't need it. Okay, very good. So we'll see you, B'ezrat Hashem, on Sunday. God bless. All the best.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
All the best.